Hello and welcome to More Tea Minister. My name is Ian. Today we have a second double review of teas from Longfengxia within Shanlinshi. In this case, rather than comparing two harvests which are the same harvest from different years, we've got two harvests from the same year. So on my left, we have from Taiwan Tea Crafts their May 2025 harvest Longfengxia High Mountain Oolong tea. And on my right, their winter harvest, which is October 2025. Take a look at the labels in a moment, and then we'll move on to discuss the tea. We've already discussed what Longfengxia is in a previous video. It's Dragon Phoenix Gorge. It's the highest altitude, at least for tea growing, within Shanlinshi, and it's a very prominent tea growing region in its own right, even though it's sort of more broadly within Shanlinshi. So let's move on to the next part of our video. Here we are looking at the packaging for Taiwan Tea Crafts Longfengxia High Mountain Oolong tea. On the left, bearing in mind the packaging itself is completely generic, it's the labels that are distinctive. We have Taiwan Tea Crafts up here, Longfengxia High Mountain Oolong tea, 20-gram packet, that's their standard sample size. And then here, lot 1422, May 2025. 100% tea leaves produce of Taiwan and a best before date. And over here, really all we need to notice, it's winter 2025, it's 50 grams, and it's October 2025. So let's now take a look at the teas inside these two packets side by side. Here we are looking at the tea material for Taiwan Tea Crafts Longfengxia Oolong, and it's their May 25, their spring harvest tea. The smell of the tea is very heady. Once again, it's so sweet and so fruity and so perfumey, it's almost edging into something slightly bitter just because the sheer amount of sort of zestiness to it. The tea, I would say, the average colour isn't quite as dark as in some cases. It's more sort of an emerald than a dark green. Some of the stalk material is visible, but not as much as in some cases. The tea beads, I would say on average, are about 5 mil, shading down to about 3, with some outliers obviously above and below that range. But the colour scheme is pretty uniform. The sort of green edges that you get on some of these tea beads aren't quite as obvious as in some instances. So now let's move on to take a look at the winter harvest. Looking at the winter harvest, I would say the tea beads have got a lot more variety in colour and size. So the sort of green edges to the tea beads are a lot more prominent, I think in part because these tea beads are on average a lot larger. Let me just flatten that out and maybe you'll see. Some of these are absolutely massive. That's well over a centimetre. And I would, some of the similar material there. I would say on average they're above 5 millimetres. And because of that, the green edges are more visible. The stalk material, I think some of what I'm seeing as green is the dried out stalk. The stalk material, therefore, is fairly prominent. The tea that isn't shaded along the edges or by the stalks is a pretty dark green, but because there's so much lighter green material, it looks a lot more varied. The smell of the leaf is sweet, slightly creamy, slightly perfumey, but not as intense in the fruit as the spring, and it comes across more like a slightly dried fruit smell. So very inviting, and I'm looking forward to reviewing this tea and the spring in our reviews, our Western and Gongfu sessions. So let's move on to that. Hello and welcome to our Teapot or Western style review for our two teas for today. They're both from Taiwan Tea Crafts. As a reminder, it's their spring 25 and winter 25 Longfengxia teas, Qingshin cultivar. In both instances, both these teas, this is the first steeping for both tea, and the parameters are 3.5 grams of tea, 150 mils of water, 3.5 minutes at 95 degrees centigrade. So let's take a look at the colour of our two teas. Taking a look myself, I would say they are pretty much spot on. The spring might have a slightly more intense yellow, but other than that, they are pretty much a straightforward yellow colour, maybe a touch of green in both instances. Let's check the aroma. I think sweet and fruit and cream, something vegetal, all coming together really well. Pretty intense for our winter. I would say the same, but there's something, I like adding a lot of freshness. There's something herbal. I always say herbal verdant, something verdant, just something sharp and green. That's making it different, but behind it is the same sweet and fruit and cream. So let's try a tasting of these teas. On the cup, much the same as what I was just saying, although the hint of that herbal has crept into the cup where it wasn't the aroma on the cup, where it wasn't the aroma on the jug. Just what I was saying, fruity, a hint of fruit, but there is some bit of zing to it. There's freshness, there's definite freshness, fresh, sweet, creamy, maybe a touch of vegetal, very lively. Quite a bit of body already for a first steeping. Let's try our second one, the Winter Harvest, first steep. Funnily enough, I haven't got the herbal there, it's the cream and the sweet. Sweet and cream, but that freshness is there. In both instances, interestingly, they responded very well to the steeping. There's no drop off in flavour. Wow. Both pretty intense in their own way. This one, the winter, it's that fresh, that zing, that verdant note that's really, it balances very well with the sweet and the cream. A really good showing. So let's move on to our second steeping and see how that pans out. Hello and welcome to the second steeping of these two teas from Longfengxia from Taiwan Tea Crafts. The brewing parameters are the same, 3.5 grams of tea, 150 mils of water, 95 degrees centigrade for 3.5 minutes. It's a new sort of combination for me, and I think it's really working, at least on my palate. So let's take a look at the colour of these teas. They both picked up a little more green, I would say, but they're identical. And they've got it's a really intense yellow. I'm really looking very inviting. I don't know why a particularly yellow would be inviting, but it is. The aroma, there's something fresh in there. The cream is slightly stronger than that. And the sweetness kind of holding it together. Really nice. I think I'm going to enjoy this. And this is the same, but there's freshness overlaying it to the point it's almost like a sort of green apple. I'm not saying it's fruity as such, but it's that kind of freshness, just verdant freshness. And it's sweet, so it's not sort of herbal. Okay, that's fantastic. Sorry, I've just looked to one side there. The cat's in his usual snoozing spot in his basket, and he must be dreaming. He's sort of twitching away, just making sure he's okay. Everything we were just saying, but the touch of vegetal on the cup there. Very well balanced. trying to work out whether the flavour's dropping off or if it's just sort of more subtle. I don't think it's dropping off. It's more subtle than the smell would indicate, but it's all there. Some fresh, some sweet, some cream. But yeah, definitely more subtle than I thought it would be. It may just be it put so much flavour. Both teas responded very well to the first tea. So I'm wondering if you would do something like, I don't know how you would do it. Maybe give it slightly less time. Maybe 3 to 3.5 or 3 and 3. The herbal, not the herbal, I beg your pardon, the virgin green note is on top of that. That one hasn't lost any intensity. Yeah, sweet and cream, a touch of vegetal, green, and it is almost apple. There is like a subtle hint of apple juice running through. That's fantastic. Let's try the spring again. I am surprised that it's dropped off. I may not have had enough in the cup, so I'll reluctantly try it again. No, the flavour hasn't dropped off. It was just the way I was drinking it. Yeah, no. I did wonder. In fact, if you take enough, there's a tiniest hint of that fresh green apple coming through at the end on the spring one. So what can we say between these steepings? Verdant green, almost appley notes, sweetness and cream, medium body. Everything's well balanced. Definite more sweet and cream and green and fresh. In other words, there's the vegetal notes, if there is any, is just adding a bit of body, I think. A very good showing on a Western style brew. So let's see how these teas respond to a Gongfu session. See you in a moment. Hello and welcome to the first of our 2 Gongfu sessions for this video. I'm just going to take this label off so I can read you out the full name. This is the Gongfu session for Taiwan Tea Craft's Longfengxia High Mountain Oolong Tea for May 2025. The brewing parameters are, as usual, 3 grams of tea, 95 degrees centigrade, 50 mils of water per steeping, and obviously their variation is how long each steep takes. For those who were eagle-eyed, you might have said, hang on, he wasn't wearing a jumper and the lighting's changed. You're quite right. I don't even know when I recorded the previous part of this video. It was probably yesterday, but I may be wrong. And it's a lot colder and a lot darker, so hence the jumper is on. But aside from that, what else can we say? Everything's pre-warmed. This is now going to be my wastewater jug. I've got my stopwatch, pad of paper for the duration of each steep. So let's make a start. I'm going to guess it'd be about a minute, but that's pure guesswork. Are we getting much in the way of popping? We are actually. Oops. I can see some of those beads unfurling already, at least the stem material, which is quite prominent, is starting to expand already. Oops, let's say that's 15 seconds. New day. It's amazing how you can forget the routines just in the space of a day. I'm trying to get a whole lot of videos done in a row. You'll note, by the time, if anybody watches this, you'll know it. Instead of being 2 days apart, the videos are only 1 day apart because I'm trying to play catch up. And here we are. This is 45 seconds. A little bit of something herbal there, or vegetal. I think we will just take it to the minute. It does seem to be a sort of standard measure. Here we are at a minute. And let's see how that's come out. Yeah, herbal and vegetal, I would say. The stalk material has expanded just a touch, not much, and the beads have just swollen rather than unfurling. I'm sure by the time we've done, the steam will have affected that. Colour-wise, it's white tea colour, maybe a little more yellow than I'd expect, but it's that silvery white tea colour. Ooh, there's a little cream and a little something fresh and herbal there. That's impressive for a first steep. Let's pour some of that out. Yeah, those beads are barely unfurled. So, how is it on the cup? It's the same. It's cream and fresh, maybe more vegetal. It's nice and smooth. Flavor's dropping off, natural enough. It's creamy already. And more body than I expected. That's impressive. So just bear with me. I do apologise. I'm just going to take my note. And then we'll move on to our next steeping. That was pretty good for a first steep. Let's go with probably another minute, I would say. Right, that's some of the leaves starting to unfurl just with the addition of that water. So I'm going to guess we're looking at another minute. Oh, I'm starting to feel as if I'm not running out of tea to review, far from it, but I'm hoping to get as many of the 20-25 teas that I'd like to review separately done before their 2026 counterparts come out. And there's one or two teas where we're already lagging behind, that's herbal, because of teas from the end of 2025 rather than spring 2025 teas. Right, here we are at a minute. Rather than trying to play catch up with spring 2025 teas, which I am trying to get ahead of. Vegetal and creamy, slightly sweet. Yeah, the stalk material is mostly hydrated, but the leaves are very leathery and very wrinkled, so they're not in a position to give off their all just yet. That's moved into straight up yellow, I would say. Well, let's say it's the silvery colour of a white tea with a fair dose of yellow. Creamy, sweet, vegetal. It's a little fresher. I'm not saying there's any particular, it's not got a kind of verdant note, but there's no sort of dull vegetal note with it. It's all working together very nicely. Okay. Now, I thought that would have picked up in body a little, but it hasn't just yet. But the cream is more prominent. It certainly needs a longer steep. Right, but by the same token, that's starting to give the impression you wouldn't want to push that too far. So I think we will maybe rein that in at 50. Okay. Touch more water, maybe 60 mils there, just to ensure the leaves are unfurled. The one thing I do like about having a Western style brewing and a Gongfu is that it Always amazes me how you can get something radically different between the two styles, or a tea just, it's a lot easier, believe it or not, sometimes with the Gongfu than it is with the Western, or vice versa. As long as you get that sort of magic steep where you know. I think we'll bring that in at 55. There we are, 55. A strong vegetal there. Not quite cooked leaf territory, but you'd want to be careful with that. Yeah, the leaves are tender. Let's see how... Oops, that's just pure stalk. Right, there you go. There's some leaf material. Wrinkled but unfurled. Oh, excuse me. I don't normally sneeze on these videos. Let's take a look at the tea. Right, we've moved into a nice pale yellow. We moved away from that silvery edge. That's a very inviting colour. Cream and vegetal. Maybe slightly sweet. Body's picked up a little. Sweet. Less vegetal than I was anticipating. Let's try that again with a slightly larger mouthful. The body's picked up again a little. That's lovely and smooth. Some creaminess and some vegetal quality. Maybe a touch of sweetness is leavening it, but there's no floral, there's no fruity, and there's no outright freshness either. It is a nice mouthfeel though. Okay. I think it's fair to say that one probably came out better on a Western. It's really responding quite well to the Gongfu, and as I say, seems to be a little sensitive to a Gongfu treatment. So let's move on to our next review in the video, which is the Gongfu for the winter harvest from Taiwan Tea Crafts. So see you in a mo. Here we are in the final part of our video for the review of the Winter 25 Longfengxia tea from Taiwan Tea Crafts. The parameters remain the same: 3 grams of tea, 95 degrees centigrade for the water, 50 mils per steeping. Everything has once again been pre-warmed. I've got my trusty notepad or set of post-it notes to take a note of the duration of each steeping, my stopwatch, and the wastewater vessel. Let's make a start. The spring counterpart responded relatively in a usual kind of style, but I did feel we were running the risk of it oversteeping, and so be curious to know we're going to have the same problem with the winter tea. Winter leaves can be physically different to those in the spring. They can be bigger, they can be tougher, they can have more stem material, which apparently aids in the drying of the tea. So we'll check in at 45. Stop fidgeting. That's me moving the lid. That's 45. Nothing yet. I have a feeling we may as well just take it straight to a minute. Maybe a minute 5 actually, and then make the second steep shorter. There's some freshness there, some kind of verdant quality. So let's see if we're still in the white tea silvery. No, we're not. We've moved beyond that. That is silvery yellow. So it's white tea, but the yellow has crept in already. Not bad for a first steep. A little tiny bit of cream, tiny bit of vegetable, but it is mostly, there's something slightly verdant in there. The stalk material, and again, as I say, it's winter leaf, so it's not really surprising, has already hydrated a little, but the beads themselves are rock solid. So, well, it helps if it actually tastes the tea, doesn't it? Very smooth. Little bit of sweet. Oh, yeah. Edge of the palate there, some sweet. That's nice. Almost juicy. A little thin, other than that. More body than I thought. It's smooth because it's got a creamy edge and a bit of sweet. Yeah, that's really good. Maybe still that touch of freshness there. So if that was 65, maybe keep this. Let's work to 55 for this. I don't know. Okay. Let's see where we get. We're getting towards the end of a set of mini-series, at least in the... I'm recording more than one series at a time, just doing different parts of the video, so I'm not always following up the Gongfu session, the Teapot style review, and then the Gongfu. So I'm hoping by the time I catch up with myself, I will be able to literally just move all of this to one side, do the intro, and do all of that good stuff, and do the Western followed by the Gongfu. No, take that to the minute. There's not a lot there. Still something slightly fresh about it, and a bit of vegetal. The stalk material, even the stalk material is not fully steeped, and the leaves, some of the leaves have unfurled, but very, very wrinkled. See if you can see that. There you go. Colour-wise, very firmly in the yellow. That's a nice, rich yellow. Yeah, no green in it yet. Yet once again, full of freshness. Very sweet. Very fresh. Almost fruity. I think the sweetness with the freshness is giving that kind of fruity vibe. There's a word I don't usually use, vibe. My goodness. Yes. Still hasn't got all of its power, but they're sweet, it's light, definite freshness. It's not drying. Flavors lingering slightly. Yes, that's that's what I would be looking for. Just something that said, oh, right, you had a high mountain oolong there. Whether it's freshness, whether it's greenness, floral, fruity, just something. Right, third steep. Give the room, right, some of those leaves aren't covered. They're just stuck to the side. Activate Shugal. And we'll see where that gets us. Here we go at 45. Nothing yet. I think I will bring this in at 55. And if I have to do a fourth steeping, so be it. Little, again, sweetness, freshness, got some body to it there. Right, the stalk material, if I can find you some, is fully hydrated. The leaves are still pretty wrinkled though. Okay. Definitely feel we could get another steep out of that. I think a little yellow, no, a little green has crept in there now, but it's still a very rich yellow colour. The sweetness and the freshness is there, but the cream has come in now to sort of back it all up. That's really good. And I would say the same on the cup. Maybe the cream is a little more prominent. Oh yeah. Slightly perfumey and sweet, creamy. Not much body, but it's very refreshing. No drying or anything. Now, I wonder if that's the sweet spot, or looking at the state of the leaves, whether the sweet spot will come from another steep. And I think we're going to do that. Might need a bit more water, back up to 60, I think, just to fit everything in. Because once the stalks are unfurled, it's a bit like the game Kaplunk, if you're old enough to remember that, where you've got the straws holding in the marbles. Well, in this case, once the stalks unfurl, it can keep the leaves, they take up so much room in the gaiwan, it can keep the leaves above the water, or not give the leaves a great deal of room to move. So, $45. Nothing yet, but I think we will bring this in at 55 and just play it safe. Well, with the extra water, no, we'll take it back to a minute. So that's 60 mils of water for a minute. Something vegetal is crept in. Okay, yeah, the leaves are now, they've had time to move around and flatten out. Yeah, that's good. It looks to me as if some green has crept in, yeah. It's a strong yellow, but with definitely a touch more green. Hasn't lost intensity despite the extra water. All of what we had before, the freshness, the sweetness, almost fruity, but with something creamy and vegetal thrown in. Let's take a look at some of this tea leaf material. Yes, there you go. You can see how some of that leaf has definitely had a bit more room to move around. That's what we want. Everything we were just saying, cream bringing up after the sweetness and the freshness. That's the sweet spot. Everything we had before, but with more body. I thought the flavour was dropping off for a second there, but it's not. Yes, that's the sweet spot. Or maybe you could say the third steeping if you want the intense sweet and freshness. The fourth steep if you're pushing for body. Okay. So very different showing between the spring and the winter when it comes to the Gongfu. I would say the Gongfu has treated the winter harvest pretty well, because it's giving you that kind of choice. Do you want freshness and sweetness up front? Do you want to emphasize the body? Still not drying, flavour still lingering. So, once again, I really enjoyed that. That was very interesting. I hadn't had these teas before I reviewed them for the sake of the video. It's up to you to decide whether, from what we've seen, whether a Western approach or a Gongfu has something to offer you. I've really enjoyed that, and I hope it's been informative and enjoyable for you. If you are thinking about getting this particular range of teas, for this video, I'm going to be courteous and say, if you can, go through Taiwan Tea Crafts, but it's up to you. So all I wish to say now is happy steeping and God bless.